So once again, I find myself talking about Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden. Today, a new Dragon Plus released. If you don't know what Dragon Plus is, I'll give a little preview at the beginning, but we have a bunch of new art assets that we had not received, including some pretty interesting stuff that I'm a little shocked to see, as well as a little bit more insight into the book itself. So if you want to see what any of that is, stay tuned. Guys, there's a sperm whale with a in on his head. It's weird. What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I'm going to jump over here to a website. So if you don't know, Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine used to be a very long-running physical magazine that used to exist for many, many years, and I think it only stopped with 5th edition. I think it still was going through 4th edition. And basically, it was, a monthly kind of circular that would have a bunch of really cool, interesting stuff about D&D. It's how a lot of folks got started in Dungeons and Dragons. That's how Chris Perkins got started with D&D. He submitted articles to Dragon Magazine. And it was basically, I guess the way I would consider it is it wasn't necessarily playtest material, but it was considered, at least in the circles that I saw, to be less official than things that were published in a physical source book. But the spiritual successor to those magazines is Dragon Plus, a digital e-zine, if you will. And it was originally, as far as I knew, only available on your phone as the Dragon Plus app. I had since learned that it is now also a website, dnd.dragonmag.com, where you can go and see all previous issues. So we have this new one that just came out. This is Dragon Magazine, or Dragon Plus number 32, and it's going to talk all about what's going on with some, Frostmaiden stuff here. So I'm going to skip ahead because the first thing we want to talk about here is... Where is it? Here. So I don't actually see the ampersand. So they have this article usually called Imagining the Ampersand, and it showcases the D&D ampersand logo done in a bunch of different ways. Well, this is Imagining the Ampersand, April Prime, and I don't see the ampersand at all in this owlbear, unless I'm clearly missing it. So Imagining the Ampersand doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. But she is the artist and who did this owlbear art, and apparently did a bunch of concept art for Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden, and that's how we're going to know a little bit more about it. So in my last video about this, I talked about the Knucklehead Trout Old Bitey. Well, she apparently was the one who did that, because you can see right here, this art. Let me shrink myself down a little bit so you can see. But here is art of Knucklehead Trout. And then this is Old Bitey right here, the one I told you that's on the wall that a wizard casts a spell on, and basically now will either snap at you or try to talk to you like a big mouth bass, and gives you a size right here of a human male to show how big Knucklehead Trout are. I'll be honest with you, having read every Driz novel, I had no concept that they were that big or that they looked anything like this. So that kind of really, I was picturing more like a salmon or a trout, where they have kind of the elongated head, the head, and kind of the almost like beak like mouth, like a different kind of salmon. But anyway, that's what a Knucklehead Trout looks like. And then, obviously we have this little bit about Old Bitey, and there's a lot of interesting stuff about April Prime and history, into getting into D&D and getting into being an artist. But we're here to look at more. I guess was one of the co-creators of Dungeons and Doggies, which is, I've seen this going around. I remember when this came out, Steamform Miniatures. They're kind of all dog-based adventurers, or cat. At least there's cat-based adventurers too, with high-quality minis and things. Do you have? And then the question here is, do you have a favorite out of anything you created for Rime of the Frostmaiden? And that's where we get this really cool piece of art here. My favorite is Ongajuk, I guess. It sounds, I don't know. A sperm whale that can talk. The brief was that he has a lodge strapped to his head, and the characters sit in it as he ferries them across the sea. I thought it was a shame not to take the opportunity to create a fantasy submarine, so in my concept art I pitched the structure fitted to his head as being open-topped. Imagine a boat without sails that's strapped to his body using a big leather harness. I had the idea of him being able to blow a whale-sized air bubble over the boat. The doodle I had of him was probably the roughest drawing of all of them, but Chris Perkins really liked it. So you can see here, here's the sperm whale with a lodge on his head, and then you can see some, I guess, beluga whales, and an air bubble spell for diving, a space left for their blowhole, And then we can actually see the official final art here. This is I guess this is the art that's going to be in the book. And you can see there's some narwhals here as opposed to like beluga whales. We got some crabs. There's a sunken ship in the background. And then obviously we have this cool unicorn art on the front. And what I thought was really cool, which is what also makes me jealous of people that can draw, because I can't really. Like, I can craft things with my hands and you know, that kind of a thing, but I cannot draw to save my life. And it's actually her D&D party on his back. So that's like a fun little thing. Like, I had to put a party of adventurers on the back of this whale. So I chose my personal D&D party, put them on the back of it, and now that's in like a published D&D book. And that's super cool. Like, I wish that I had the ability to do kind of things like that. And they also said the wreck is the Fallen Star, sailing ship, but that's kind of just like a little Easter egg nod. Also, my question about this answers it's not going to expand. This is actually, we were wrong. It's not a bear race. It is a werebear. It's a Goliath werebear, and it is a female named Oya Minartok, the Goliath werebear. She might look scary, but she's quite nice and will help players in the adventure. When it came to her clothing, I wanted to make sure she was part of a culture, and she's got fish on her waist and things like that. So that was the one that we kind of showcased in the last video. Also, there is a gnoll vampire, which I really, really liked. So again, if you know me, I love gnolls, so that's pretty cool. So, and it's called Tekeli Lee, I guess is the name of it. A gnoll vampire, and then pitched the idea of being a striped hyena as opposed to a spotted hyena like gnolls are typically based on. And then said, you know, it's really hard to draw a gnoll as a vampire because gnolls already have fangs. So she actually said she took inspiration from Ixalan, where the vampire conquistadors have helmets with points on them to represent their fangs. And like, look at this, man, this looks so cool. Oh, it's a gnoll vampire. I'm so pumped. Like, I'm getting more and more pumped for this book the more I hear about it. So, and then again, more history about what they're doing with D&D. So we have a little bit of prompts here about Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. So I wanted to scroll through because there's a couple things. Every character gets a secret, and the only person who knows your character's secret is you, but we have a little bit more information on that. Players can play that in one of two ways. They can keep the secret close to their chest and not reveal it to the other players, fostering party paranoia, or they can divulge their secret anytime they want to and then wrestle with its consequences. Some of the secrets are benign and don't have any real consequence for the party. Others are terrifying. And then they once again reiterate, watching John Carpenter's The Thing is a great way. And realistically, folks, if you haven't seen John Carpenter's The Thing, it's just a masterpiece of cinema, regardless of the fact that it's a horror movie. It's a really well done movie. The practical effects in that movie are just absolutely top notch. It still holds up to this day. You should check it out. But again, it gets the idea of paranoia and secrets and things. That'd be a really good movie to get you in the right headspace for this. Okay, let's see. Chris Perkins and I were chatting. We think this adventure has more monsters in it than any adventure thus far. Even if you may not run this wonderfully chilly horror adventure, you can be sure you'll get a truckload of frosty monsters. My favorite is the snow golem, which is terrifying. So, confirmed snow golem. This book also has rules for things like blizzards and avalanches, and we introduced that the Goliaths have frost or cold resistance in this book. We realize that we've always said they've been adapted to living in high elevations, and I'll get into that in a future video talking about environmental climates. And then again, we have the Dyson miscellany here. We have the elven bread. We have all this other stuff about what was going on there, and the reality RP, and the Red Nose Day special orc adventure. All right, so then I scrolled through this. This is just basically, you know, the highlights of the stream, and not even so much. It's just basically what all the streams were. Now, in the works, there's some more stuff in here. So it said the adventure didn't originally cycle around Auril. It actually ended up going that way. And it says, but in the same way that Strahd is a reflection of his domain, Auril is a reflection of hers, and Icewind Dale is as cruel and unforgiving as she is. It seems strange to tell a story in that setting and not really touch upon the Frostmaiden at all, so we adjusted that. All right, and then it says, this is an approach we haven't used before where a single creature can have multiple stat blocks. Because each form is slightly tougher than the one before it, the fight becomes increasingly tense. Your party's resources are being used up during combat, but Aurel's are not. It's really scary. So it sounds like this is if you're fighting her all at once, but this sounds remarkably close to the mythic monster concept where we got in Theros, where you defeat a monster and then they enter their second form. We wanted to have the sense that you're fighting Aurel backwards in time. Her first form is called the Old Crone. It's this old, hunched, tripartite creature that combines the features of a goat, a wolf, and an owl. I guess that's the one we see on the front cover. Her middle form is called the Brittle Maiden, a svelte, angular, feminine creature made of jagged ice. And her third form is called Winter's Womb, resembling a radiant diamond that contains her divine spark. It presents Aurel in her most primal form. Aurel's cast a spell so powerful is essentially preventing the sun from rising in the region, naturally freezing everything. Showcased throughout the art, the theme of isolation and exposure permeates the book. To that point, I guess they also say that there is a presence of like Durgar dwarves because there's no sunlight, so that's a big benefit for them. And he also touches on further things that I was talking about in the last video about the lack of light sources for the art to make it difficult. So let's see, I think there's, it wasn't just plants, but also other real elements such as lighting. We tried to be consistent with the details of the world. But if it was always dusk or night, you would have that trick to fall back on. We are going to, here it is. We are going to illustrate, or include an illustration of a hag, so potential hag encounter, in a frozen cave. But I was writing the description for that encounter, I realized there was no light source and we wouldn't be able to see anything. I ended up giving the hag a will-o-wisp companion just so the artist had a light source they could include in the scene. And we have some more nice environmental art here. Then there's Zardarok Sunblight, as an ambitious Durgar who has plans to become the first of his kind to establish a kingdom on the surface. And this gives us a very nice insight into something that I'm hoping we very much get to see, and that is Chardalon, or Chardalin, I should say. So I guess he was based around like a Bond villain, specifically Goldfinger and his obsession with gold. He is obsessed with the crystalline substance known as Chardalin. So Chardalin is a magical material. It's a malleable crystalline material. It kind of functions like metal. You can use it to be shaped and altered and to make different kinds of weapons. It has the durability of steel. And it takes magic extremely well and can be used to make wands, staffs, and other magic items. So I'm hoping potentially there's magical crafting information if they're going to tell us that Chardalin can be used to craft magical things. So what it is if you, again, another reason to read the Drizzt novels is because Chardalin is basically broken shards of the crystal shard, the major elemental, artifact, or major like overarching artifact that is basically the first three written novels, the kind of the Crystal Shard, the Halfling's Gem, that whole three arc of the Drizzt novels that deals with the Crystal Shard. And when it eventually, it's even listed here, right? When it raises a crystal tower, and that's kind of what it does. It's Cryn Shinneban is the crystal tower. And when the tower is destroyed, fragments were scattered all over Icewind Dale. Those who claim these fragments, and they do have, Cryn Shinneban had a mind affecting ability. It could take over people and convince them to do things they wouldn't normally do. So those who claim these fragments have become corrupted by the demonic magic and start to behave very badly. He noting that R.A. Salvatore's The Crystal Shard is such a key piece of Icewind Dale's history and identity, it would have been weird to tell a story in that setting and not reference it. So what Zardarok does with his vast supply of Chardalin is utterly terrifying. And again, it also says, it's become suffused with evil forms of magical energy, such as demonic magic. So it's also sometimes been referred to, or I guess Chardalin is Chardalin. Sometimes I was thinking of black ice, which I feel like is also somewhat similar. But anyway, this is a cool new material, right? We've seen mithril, we've seen adamantine. This is a new material that potentially we might be able to get armor and weapons made out of it, which may provide a whole new concept, which is good because this is something that I've wanted, is variability and variety in weapons and armor. And I think magical materials is a very simple way to do that. You don't have to make new types of armor. You just make new materials to make the armor out of, and that solves the problem, right? I mean, there's a ton of other magical materials that exist in Dungeons & Dragons and even in Faerun, right? Glass steel is another one, a transparent metal that's stronger than steel that is completely transparent. right? So you could make a shield that you could see through, but it's as strong as a steel. So that's like another cool material I would love to see brought into 5th edition. All right, and they mention a lot about Netheril, and that, you know, there's a, what does it say? Let's see, Netherese city buried beneath the ice. Netheril is one of the Forgotten Realms' lost empires. A necropolis buried under the ice is a type of location we've never visited before, describing the city as having an Atlantean feel. And then again, there's a lot to talk about Netheril. Let's see. Icons of the Realms, we get this new, whatever this mini is. I don't think I could see the specific type, but this thing is terrifying. And I don't believe we have a stat block for this thing yet. Could be wrong. Snowy Owlbear they talk about. Here's a Frost Giant Skeleton. I believe we do have a stat block for that from one of the more recent adventures. And then, you know, I think that's about it. Let's see. His personal favorites are the Null Vampire, the Goliath Bear, and the God Oral has multiple forms, and all of our different aspects are captured in this set. One is definitely creepy. So there you go. We're going to get all the different Oral sets in this. Okay. Well, let's keep going on. The Beetle and Grim thing I'm not going to talk too much about because $500 is an insane price. We got the 80s Tees collab to get all the different cartoon-based stuff for that. A new D&D mobile game is coming out called, what is it called? Dice Adventures. And then most importantly, or one of the most important things, is the new Drizzt novel is coming out, R.A. Salvatore's Relentless. And I'm not going to go too much into spoiling things because there's some pretty major stuff happens in the last book. But this is, you know, where does it say? Tells Dragon Plus at his latest trilogy featuring Drow warrior Drizzt moves towards its thrilling finale. There are people still reading these books who started reading them in 1988, and that thought is overwhelming. In the 32 years since he first appeared in Crystal Shard, Drizzt has become one of the most beloved characters in all of fantasy, unless you're a large portion of the internet that seem to comment on things that they don't like Drizzt. But, and again, for people who are asking on the last video, I think it's just because he's popular. I don't know. From his appearance in the classic Baldur's Gate video game series to his recent immortalization as a Funko Pop figure, including Guinevere. But anyway, so what's really cool is, without spoiling too much about it, in this most recent trilogy, Drizzt's father, Zagnaphane, was returned to the Prime Material Plane. And Zagnaphane has a stat block here, which is something that's pretty cool. So you can see that Zagnaphane's a CR16 monster. It says, to celebrate the upcoming release of the final book in the latest trilogy, he decided Dragon Plus worked with R.A. Salvatore to create a stat block for the character of Zagnaphane. So first of all, it also introduces, I'm trying to see, let me see if I can get this to be bigger. I can just download the stat block here, I think, at the end. Because I want to be able to showcase this, because this is, okay, this is much better. Oops. Yeah, there we go. All right. So, he's a CR16 monster. Oh, no, wait. This says CR16, and the downloaded stat block says CR14. Interesting. They're different. The two stat blocks are drastically different. What? Okay, this is weird. So let's talk about this. All right. So the stat block in the, how much is different here? Armor class is 21. Hit points, he had 142 in the article, 150 in the stat block. 30, 30, 20, 22, 16, 19, 12, 14. Those are the same. Strength and con saves. Athletics, intimidation, perception. Yep. Resistance to poison. Oh, he has it in this stat block, but he doesn't have it listed here. But then it says he has advantage. Dark vision to 120 feet. He's got Fey ancestry. He's got Drow magic rate, dancing lights, darkness, fairy fire, and levitate on himself only. 1 legendary resistance per day. +3 studded leather armor. 2 +3 long swords, a +1 whip, and 6 +1 daggers. Also in this thing here, he also has a sunlight pellet, which is a brand new magic item, which is very cool because those existed and are very prominent in the Drizzt novels. So what it says right here is Sun Pellet, wondrous item, very rare. This small ceramic ball is coated with an enchanted oil. As an action, you can crack a sun pellet or throw it up to 100 feet, whereupon it releases a brilliant magical light. This light is equivalent to a sunburst spell, but has a radius of 20 feet. So the sunburst spell actually does damage. The pellets in the books were always just done because drow can't see. They have sunlight sensitivity. So dropping a sunlight pellet would explode and blind them, and that was the whole point of those pellets. This is actually going to let you do damage with it. Okay, so we have all that. Here he does not have poison resilience, which was advantage on saving throws versus poison. He just has poison resistance. Second wind for a d10 plus 11. He does not have second wind. Oh, interesting. They made the sunlight pellet an action that recharges. He does not have second wind in the downloaded block, but he does have it here for a d10 plus 11 hit points. And he also had standing leap. His long jump is 20 feet and his high jump is 10 feet with or without a running start. Originally here he has 3 attacks or 2 attacks with his daggers. Here he has 4 attacks with his longsword or 2 with his daggers. Dagger, the d8 plus 8 on the damage. The whip is a d4 plus 7. Dagger's a d4 plus 7. Again, here the sun pellet was an item you could just use. Here it's an action ability he has. He throws a ceramic ball that explodes. It recharges on a 5/6. 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point. Must make a DC 15 con save. On a fail, the creature takes 8d6 radiant damage and is blinded for a minute. On a successful save, it isn't blinded. A creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of its turn. Any darkness that is created by a spell that overlaps with the burst of light is dispelled. He has Uncanny Dodge as a reaction. Here he has Uncanny Dodge, but also Parry, where he adds 4 to his AC against one attack that would hit him. And then he has a legendary action in this book here. Move up to his speed without provoking attacks of opportunity. Or for 2 actions, he has 3 legendary actions, or 2, make 1 plus 3 longsword attack with a reach of 10 feet. Now he has 3 legendary actions. Offhand Strike is a +1, make 1 attack with a dagger or his whip. Move up to his speed without provoking attacks of opportunity. Or Steel Whirlwind. He makes 1 attack with a +3 longsword against each creature of his choice within 5 feet. That's very interesting to me to see that the stat blocks between the two are so drastically different and they have not been updated. So I like it. I mean, I feel like they both work very well. It is interesting that Zagnafane doesn't have sunlight sensitivity because he grew up in the Underdark. So he was not like Drizzt, who spent, years of his life acclimating to the surface. But I guess, they kind of hand-wave that in the newest one. But and then there's some more death saves here and some death saves dice. And I think that's pretty much it. Beasts and Behemoths. Thorough stuff. Best of the DM's Guild. How to play remotely. And then it sounds like next issue is just going to have more stuff on Icewind Dale, right? We also speak with guest editor Hal Howard, who's been playing and DMing for a while. He'll tell us how he got to playtest a section of Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden, before anyone else in the world. He secured his spot on the editorial team thanks to a very generous extra life donation, and will focus on our plans for the 2020 charity drive. That's really interesting. All to raise funds for Children's Miracle Network while you join Teen D&D, as we try to add to the 1 million raised since 2013 to support sick kids. And then again, more stuff to come. So that's very interesting. It was nice to see some of the new art. We knew that there was going to be a bunch of new art in this book. So that was really cool. It was nice to see a stat block for Zagnafane, although I'm a little confused as to which one I'm supposed to use. But I am curious, what are your thoughts? The fact that we're getting a Zagnafane stat block, maybe we will get Drizzt stat blocks in Icewind Dale. I don't know. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you again to my patrons over on Patreon for continuing to support the channel. And if you haven't subscribed at this point, I would really appreciate it if you did so. And I will see you all next time.